Hello everyone, thank you for taking the time to watch this online presentation. It is the second in a series that the Evaluation Division will be putting on over the next few months. My name is Yusuf Khalil. I'm an Evaluation Specialist within the Evaluation Division. That's in the Policy Office of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs here at the State Department. And today we're going to be discussing program design and logic models. Program design is vital even if your program isn't new. So even if you're not dealing with fleshing out an idea for a new program, if you're dealing with an existing program, it's important to periodically and systematically consider the program design and the context around the program design so that we can refine, articulate, or change the design in light of changes in strategy and/or circumstances. Sound program design is also the basis for creating better and more useful performance monitoring plans, which in turn give us better data and allow us to learn more efficiently from that data, which will hopefully inform the process changes that we need to make to achieve more effective program implementation and ultimately meet our program goals and objectives and our Bureau's goals and objectives. There are three overarching components of program design: aligning to existing strategies, situational analysis, and then finally the actual articulation of the design of the program. All of these things are interlinked somewhat, and the process is iterative. It's not always linear, as I'm going to be presenting here, but for illustrative purposes, we're sticking with the ideal timeline and steps in the ideal order. Whether we're working with an idea for a new program or simply refining the program design for an existing program, it's important to situate our thinking within the wider strategic context. For ECA, of course, that means asking ourselves, which functional bureau strategy, goals, and objectives would this or does this existing program fall under? How would this program advance strategic goals and objectives? What about other strategic goals and objectives, such as any relevant integrated country strategies or any other USG agencies that the program idea or existing program could potentially help advance at a strategic level? Here we have a graphic representation of the relationship between strategic goals and objectives, which sit above the dashed line, and programmatic goals and objectives, which sit below the dashed line. Programmatic goals and objectives are what we will be dealing with when we get to actually refining and articulating the program design. They should be more immediate and feed into the strategic goals and objectives that we are working with at this stage. Once we have a good idea about the strategic goals and objectives that our program or our idea for a new program will fit into, we can move on to the next step in the program design process, which is conducting a situational analysis. A situational analysis is a comprehensive review of the current state or conditions surrounding the program idea or the existing program. It's an analysis that takes into account past and present contextual factors surrounding the program environment, and it considers the feasibility of a new idea or the feasibility of the program continuing as it exists. This is a good chance to leverage existing information at minimal cost to maximally inform our program design and allow us to increase our general awareness of the program environment. For an existing program, it's a good time to ask, what's changed since the last time the program design was articulated? Some internal factors to consider when conducting your situational analysis are, what are the program's budget that we have available? What personnel do we have available to work on the program? What IT or systems do we need to establish or do we have at our disposal already in order to implement the program? This is a good time also to take into account existing documentation at our disposal, such as previous evaluations and monitoring documents from other programs. It is also a good time to leverage subject matter experts in the office, bureau, at regional bureaus, at posts, or in cooperating agencies such as USAID or the Department of Defense. At this stage, we want to focus on preventing duplication and increasing awareness of programmatic gaps. Moving on to the external portion of the situational analysis, this is where we take into account data from secondary sources, such as the National Association of Foreign Student Advisors, Institute of International Education, perhaps government statistics. We can also coordinate with external stakeholders by conducting interviews, focus groups, or surveys to figure out what are other entities doing in this programmatic area. Some other crucial factors to consider are cultural and institutional factors, as well as economic factors such as differences among populations involved, the cost of participation, and the general level of economic development in another country that we might be working with. Once we've conducted our situational analysis, we can move on to a needs statement. A needs statement is going to be a clear description of the issue, challenge, or need that the program seeks to address. It condenses the information that we gathered in the situational analysis to form a clear, succinct, and detailed description of the need. A comprehensive needs statement will answer the 5 W questions: why the need exists, who the key stakeholders will be, what the central activity of the program will be, where it will take place, and when. Let's go through with an illustrative needs statement for an existing program here at ECA, the National Security Language Initiative for Youth. The primary stakeholders involved, the WHO, are going to be American youth ages 15 to 18, U.S. foreign policy institutions, and foreign publics that the exchange visitors interact with. The central activity and other key stakeholders involved are doing the actual exchange. We hope that the students will learn about their host countries and learn the language spoken in the host country. And we hope that they will become better informed and go on to work in foreign policy or national security institutions. The need for the program is urgent as it deals with national security. The timing of the program is persistent as this is an ongoing program, but if we were crafting a needs assessment for a specific document, we might limit that to the next school year, the next cohort, etc. In terms of geographic scope, we're dealing with countries where languages that have been deemed critical to national security are spoken. So we have countries where Arabic is spoken, we have China, countries where Russia is spoken, Turkey, India, Korea, and Tajikistan. Let's go through an illustrative needs statement for the NISLY program, and then break it down into its constituent parts. In order to better support U.S. foreign policy goals, increase national security, promote U.S. competitiveness, and build mutual understanding, more American youth must learn about the cultures and learn the languages deemed crucial to U.S. foreign policy and national security, such as Arabic, Chinese, Hindi, Indonesian, Korean, Persian, Russian, and Turkish. Let's break this down into its constituent parts. So, the main stakeholder, the WHO, are going to be American youth, but secondarily, we can discuss those foreign policy institutions, national security institutions, and foreign populations that we mentioned earlier. But the main stakeholder is going to be American youth. For the second W question, what, we're going to discuss the central activity of the program, which is learning about cultures and other languages. The when is going to be persistent, so that's not going to end up in the needs statement. The where is going to be those countries that we mentioned earlier, where the specific languages that are crucial to national security are spoken. And finally, the why. In order to support U.S. foreign policy goals, increase national security, promote U.S. competitiveness, and build mutual understanding. Now that we have our strategic alignment, situational analysis, and needs statement done, we can move on to actually articulating the program design. And we'll start with program-specific goals and objectives, move on to a theory of change, build a logic model, and finally, think about the assumptions that exist within those things. Program goals explain the overall intent or purpose of the program. These program goals and objectives should be specific to the program and more immediate term than the strategic goals and objectives that they feed into. Program-specific goals should still be broad and visionary. They're ambitious in nature, but also realistic and specific enough to clearly communicate the aim of the program. They should express future direction and vision by using active or directional verbs. Program-specific goals should be long-term and may extend beyond the time frame of the program itself. They also do not have to be dependent upon the resources of the program because they represent a broader desired end state to which the program is contributing. Objectives are statements of the conditions or end state that the program is expected to achieve within its time frame and within the resources of the program. In contrast to goals, program objectives should incorporate SMART principles. They should be specific in that they describe the desired result in concrete and clear terms such that anyone reading it should interpret it in the same way. They should be measurable in that they can be evaluated and/or assessed against some standard, such that it is possible to know when the objective is met. And they should be achievable and attainable within the allotted time and resources of the program. They should also be relevant and linked to the program's goals. Now that we have our program-specific goals and objectives laid out, let's articulate them in relation to those higher-level strategic goals and objectives from the results framework, the functional bureau strategy, or the integrated country strategies that are involved. This slide illustrates the relationship between strategic goal, program-specific goals, program-specific objectives, and the logic model. As you can see, on the top in red is our functional bureau strategy goal that pertains to ECA as a bureau. This is the strategic goal that our program, the National Security Language Initiative, is going to be feeding into. Just underneath that, under the dotted line, is where the elements of program design come in. On the left, in between the red and bottom green boxes, we've got a program-specific goal, which is to enable partnerships between citizens through exchange programs. Underneath that is a program-specific objective to increase the language skills and cultural knowledge of participants. The objective is going to be more immediate term than the program-specific goal, and the program-specific goal is going to be more immediate term than the wider functional bureau strategy goal on the top. Increasing language skills and cultural knowledge of our participants is something we can reasonably expect the program to achieve on its own, and it's something we can reasonably expect to measure with some validity. On the right, we've got the logic model and its component parts, and we'll get into those more in detail later on. But as you can see, the outputs and outcomes contribute to our program-specific objective of increasing language skills. And our impact at the top of the logic model, what we aim to achieve, feeds into the goal, the program-specific goal of enabling partnerships between citizens. And that in turn contributes to the larger functional bureau strategy goal, which is the most wide-ranging and ambitious. Now that we've done our situational analysis, created a needs statement, sorted out our strategic alignment, and designed program-specific goals and objectives, we can move on to the first real step of actually articulating program design, which is creating a theory of change. A theory of change is nothing more than a brief statement summarizing why, based on available evidence and in consideration of other possible paths, we expect the activities we're going to undertake throughout the program to lead to the desired outcomes and impact we are striving to achieve. A theory of change is explanatory and deals more with the way outcomes translate into impacts than the logic model, which is descriptive and representative of the program's functions and its relationship between its constituent parts and components. Theory of changes are generally designed as follows. If we do our activities, then we will achieve our outcomes, which will contribute to an impact because research suggests these things are related in some way. Let's walk through an illustrative theory of change I developed for the example we've been using throughout the presentation, the National Security Language Initiative for Youth. If more American youth are given the chance to learn through immersion about foreign cultures and learn foreign languages that are critical to national security, then they will become interested in pursuing careers in this field and will contribute to the formation of a foreign policy based on mutual understanding in the future, because research suggests that immersion is the best way to engage youth and learn about foreign cultures and languages. Now that we have our theory of change designed, we can use that to inform the next crucial step in program design, which is the articulation of a logic model. A logic model is a tool that allows us to systematically document and visually represent the program's investments, activities, and desired results, and explain the relationship between them. The logic model allows the program team and key stakeholders to work through how and why they think the program will achieve the established goals and objectives. It also becomes the basis for designing monitoring plans and for evaluating the program in the future. It tells us what to monitor and what we can evaluate progress against. It's critical that all key stakeholders are involved and consulted, including the implementing partners, managers, and other key decision makers, as well as monitoring and evaluation staff. We can think of the logic model as a series of if-then relationships, which, if implemented as intended, will lead to the desired outcomes and impact that we're seeking to achieve through the program. There are 5 common components of a logic model. Starting on the left, we've got inputs. These are the resources available to the program for its implementation. Generally, these include staff, funding, and other materials that are necessary to implement the program. Moving on, we've got the activities, which are what the program will actually do to address the programmatic need. These are often workshops, trainings, some kind of administrative support, conducting an internship, etc. These are the services or activities that the actual program will deliver. Outputs are tangible things that the program will produce, such as outreach materials, research papers, or even hours of instruction, or for an exchange program, it can be number of participants. The outcomes are the immediate changes we expect the program to achieve. These generally focus on changes to the knowledge or attitudes of the program's participants. For example, we could have a change in attitude as a result of an awareness campaign, or a change in behavior or skill level due to a training program. The short-term outcomes of the program should be linked to the program's objectives, and often include learning outcomes, attitude changes, relationships built, or skills acquired. Finally, impact describes the systemic or societal level results that the program aims to achieve in the long term. These can focus on behavior changes, normative changes, policy changes that the program seeks to achieve. These are not often realized for years after a program is implemented and will be long-term outcomes. You can think of these as what would success look like if the program's goals were ultimately achieved, and often coincide with foreign policy goals and objectives, or bureau-wide goals and objectives. Let's go through the component parts of a logic model for the NISLY program. Starting with the inputs. What resources does our program need to be implemented? These are often pretty similar for State Department programs. They're going to include our staff, the funding we need, and any materials we need to carry out the program. Next, we've got the activities the NISLY program will conduct. These include facilitating trips abroad, any language courses or cultural activities that the participants will engage in when they are abroad, and then after they return, doing alumni engagement. Outputs are those tangible materials that the program will produce over the course of its implementation. We include in this number of participants, which is the primary output for many ECA programs. But these also include outreach materials and something like hours of instruction as well. For NISLY, this is going to be the number of participants, hours of instruction or volunteering that they have had during the course of their exchange, and any other outreach materials that the program produces. Moving on to outcomes, the primary outcome of this program will be increased knowledge of other cultures that the exchange students experience on their trips. Secondarily, they will have increased language skills and hopefully move on to having a career that contributes to foreign policy goals in some way. Impacts describe system or societal level results and can focus on behavior, normative, and policy changes that the program ultimately seeks to achieve. Though not often realized for years after the program's already implemented, long-term impact is based on what success would look like if the program goals were ultimately achieved. So these are going to be in line with those functional bureau strategy and strategic level goals that the program seeks to contribute to. In this case, for NISLY, it's going to be a better informed foreign policy as a result of alumni who are more interested in the countries and go on to study them and have an increased mutual understanding with those countries, getting hooked into the foreign policy apparatus of the country and influencing it in a better way. And that's ultimately going to lead to better relations between the two countries and increased mutual understanding that's captured in the functional bureau strategy. Now that we have our logic model laid out, we can move on to the final step in program design, articulating and examining the assumptions and external factors at play. Assumptions are functions or dynamics we assume to be true and build into the program's design. A good example of a program that uses an assumption is an anti-smoking ad might assume that if people are made aware of the adverse effects that smoking has on people's health, that they'll be discouraged from doing so. Or if people are made aware of the positive impacts that exercise has on our health, we might be encouraged to do more exercise. For ECA, a central assumption is that exposure leads to changes in positive perception. So if we send Americans to other countries to mingle with people who maybe might not have met many Americans in their lives, that some of the misconceptions about Americans might be cleared up, and that the perception that those people have of Americans will be improved, and this holds true for foreigners coming to America as well. External factors are those factors that can influence the program's ability to achieve success but are outside of our control. For example, an adverse political change in a country that we're implementing our program in could create a situation in which the program's implementation is no longer feasible. It's good to articulate these so that all of the program's stakeholders know what to expect in case something unforeseen should happen. This concludes my remarks on program design and logic models. Thanks for watching my presentation. If you're interested in more monitoring and evaluation resources, please go to the Evaluation Division's website and Diplopedia page linked below. If you're interested in other presentations, please join us for one of our upcoming webinars or seminars on one of these M&E topics. Thanks again. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at ecaevaluation@state.gov. Goodbye.